What is up, my bodyweight warriors, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at hip flexor stretching and how to do it the right way. This is the second part in the Do It Right series. The first one was the pigeon stretch, which I'll link down below. If you want to suggest the next stretch to be done in the Do It Right series, leave a comment down below and I'll share my opinion on it. Today's video, we're going to be going over the 4 mistakes that is commonly seen, the reasons why, and then also I'm going to share with you my personal favorite stretch when it comes to the hip flexor. First of all, let's look at the mistakes. To understand why they're mistakes, you might need to understand a little bit about what the group of muscles that is the hip flexor and what it does. Primarily, it's going to flex the hip, it's going to bring that leg towards your abdomen, and it's also going to anteriorly tilt the pelvis as well. So with this in mind, the first mistake that I see commonly when it comes to hip flexor stretching is the lack of posterior pelvic tilt. To get a full stretch on the hip flexor, we want to make sure that we tilt our pelvis posteriorly. This means we want to kind of tuck that butt under, engage the glute, engage the hamstring, and that automatically, no matter what stretch you're doing for the hip flexor, you're going to feel a dramatic increase in the level of stretch. It's also going to help loosen the hip flexor and that group of muscles because you're going to get some element of what is called reciprocal inhibition. So this is when we're contracting the antagonistic muscle to the one we're trying to stretch. So we're trying to stretch the hip flexor here. If we contract the glute and the hamstring, it's going to actually help the hip flexor to relax. So we get a better stretch. We get more of a stretch because we're posteriorly tilting the pelvis, which is the opposite to what the hip flexor wants to do, which is anteriorly tilt it, and we get the bonus reciprocal inhibition. Issue number 2 is that you see people folding forward and folding over when it comes to the hip flexor stretching. Now, the hip flexor function is to bring the leg towards the abdomen. Now, if we bring the abdomen closer towards our leg, we're going to dramatically reduce the level of stretch that's placed upon it. So very simply, what we want to do is instead of sitting down forward on top of our leg in front of us or whatever, we actually want to be as upright as we can and lengthening over that front of our body, over the core, to increase the level of stretch on the hip flexor. Whilst we're doing this, we want to make sure that we're still maintaining that good posterior pelvic tilt as well, with the glute engaged. The last mistake, which is a little bit more of a nuanced mistake, is the twisting of the hip, because you're reducing the amount of hip extension you need to perform the stretch. This one applies to a lot of hip flex stretching, but it's probably one of the most common ones to see when it comes to people doing the front splits. Number 1, by contracting the glute, like we mentioned with posteriorly tilting the pelvis, this is automatically going to help square those hips up. Number 2, what you can do is make sure that you feel the weight pretty evenly on the knee of the back leg, and you also want to make sure that most of the ground contact of the back foot is going to be on the outside of the foot, on those little toes. That's going to ensure that we're pretty square. The last way you can do this is you can actually use your front leg to try and push backwards slightly, and that's also going to then help square up our hips. But understand that this order of 4 mistakes is kind of done in priority of which you should do them. You should first ensure that you have posterior pelvic tilt of the pelvis. Next, you should ensure that you're sat nice and upright, ensuring you get maximum stretch over the hip flexor. And then finally, you need to think about pushing that leg back and squaring the hips up. So that's the order you should do it. No matter what stretching you're doing for the hip flexor, these are good form cues to do. Finally, let's talk about my personal favorite stretch, and that is the bent leg hip flexor stretch. The reason for this is it's going to more aggressively attack that rectus femoris, which is one of the components of the hip flexor. So to do this stretch, you're just going to need a wall, a box, or something to place your foot against behind you. You then place your knee a little bit further away from that object. So the closer it is, the harder it's going to be. It's not necessarily the most comfortable. I would suggest placing your knee anywhere from 5 to 15, 20 centimeters away from the object which you're using it to prop the knee up. From here, just get yourself into a lunge position. We want to think again, what do we want to do first? We posteriorly tilt the pelvis. That's going to ensure we get most stretch on the hip flexor. If you're in this position, you may find that this is plenty of a stretch for you, and just understanding and getting that mind muscle connection of engaging the glute is going to give you enough of a stretch. We use the front leg to push the hips back and ensure that they're squared off. Again, this is going to be helped by the first 2 points. And then finally, if this stretch is too easy for you, too light at this point, we can then start to move the hips further forward and sink deeper into this stretch. And that's basically it. That is my personal favorite kind of passive-ish hip flexor stretch. You can then play with some PNF, some contract relax stuff by contracting the glute or trying to push your foot into the wall. There's loads of stuff in loads of places you can take this, but for your basic hip flexor stretch, that's going to absolutely hammer those hip flexors. Understand that hip flexors are a stubborn group of muscles. They do take a lot of time to peel away a lot of that fascia layers that are in front of it. So just take your time and sit in the stretch, and eventually over time they will loosen. But that has been basically it for this Do It Right video. I hope you enjoyed my tips on stretching a hip flexor. I do promise you, just go and try these ones. Just go try them next time you're in the gym and you will feel the difference in how effective this stretching is for your hip flexor. If you have any suggestions for a future Do It Right video, whatever the stretch is, whatever you want to know, leave a comment down below in the comment section and I'll try to get it and make the video for you. If you just enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button and support the channel. Right next to it is that subscribe button as well, so make sure you don't miss out on any future Do It Right videos, any future content, and just join the Bodyweight Warrior tribe. But that has been it for this week, guys. I'll catch you in the next episode. Have a strong week and peace.